Hello and welcome everybody to the Indie Hour. We are back with another game system selected by GMG patrons and brought to you here a week later. If you guys aren't watching this live, you're watching this on YouTube. That means you are getting the second version of this. What we typically do is we have like a before and after show where we sit and chat for a minute. The patrons select a game for us to cover, and I will pair it with an appropriate sort of game system in the same theme that you could potentially like use the same miniatures for, the same collection for, and if you like that kind of theme, then collect for. We feature independent game designers of all different sorts from all different places. And we're hoping to cover over 100 games this year and bring light to some of the things being done in the tabletop wargaming community by independent artists and creators to give you options for the collections you already have. And today, we're taking a look at NECROPOLIS. It's a diorama skirmish game. It comes from the #28 community and is made by Peter Vigors. This was selected by patrons, and as I'm looking for theme and model type, I decided to pair it with ROTVÅRLDEN from Realms of Carnage, my friend Mike Hutchinson's game. And this is sort of a spin-off of his Wizard combat game from Blaster that he designed with Sean Sutter. More of a party game than a warband skirmish game, but would use generally the same kind of miniatures in NECROPOLIS, and so it was an excellent sort of pairing for two different kinds of experience. That was really cool. So we're going to dive in. What I typically do is cover one game, then take some comments and questions from the chat, and then dive in and do the other game afterwards. And we go for about an hour. So let's take a look at NECROPOLIS by Peter Vigors. So the first thing that struck me about NECROPOLIS, which I absolutely loved, is the art. If you're a fan of like early 2000s Games Workshop publications, things like Mordheim, or 6th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle, or 40K from that period even, you're going to find the sort of style and feeling of Peter's art pretty familiar. Like, it's a very black and white, grim, sort of like detail encrusted sort of type of art. And he runs NECROPOLIS through a Patreon. You can see there's a couple different options here for you to support him, but you can also get the playtest rules off of his Discord to take part in the making of things. There's sculpting for a lot of the miniatures for that 28 style vibe. So Denizens of the City, you can see he's got all kinds of stuff posted here, as well as updates on the art for the inside of the rulebook. Now, I love this little castle. Like, this stuff is incredibly cool, and you can just join the Patreon for free to get access to all this stuff and updates on the project. But look at this cool. Like, this has a almost a fighting fantasy Citadel of Chaos kind of look to it. This wasn't something that I wasn't familiar with. I'd already been following NECROPOLIS mostly just for the art. It has a great, like, these are very like Dead Marsh Spectre, but with spider legs. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I think if you're a fan of that, like maybe Dark Souls, Grimdark, Blanche, Alex Boyd is another one that comes up. Karl Kopinski even. That look, Adrian Smith sort of style art, then there's a lot here for you that I think you'll like. Lots of cool character designs. And the theme of the game is the city is dead. And you guys are the haunting sort of forces inside the city that are battling sort of for supremacy inside of this like dead world. So a little bit, the way that NECROPOLIS is sort of described, you can see here, it's the cover with this beautiful like centipede or millipede, I guess, on top of this skull. It's described as a diorama skirmish game. So obviously the premier sort of like design principle behind this is the feeling of how it looks and the immersiveness of it. And if you kind of take that as it's a rules light, feeling for focus sort of game, you get an idea of what Peter's trying to do here. So the aged living is dead long ago, only the dead remain. Liches chase the ambitions of aeons past. Revenants wage war over crumbling cities, and the broken undead flock to find meaning in the service of their dark lords. It's very like Mordor after they win, kind of a feeling. NECROPOLIS is a skirmish game set in a dark fantasy world where all life as we know it has vanished. So this is, again, if you just want to jump into your first indie game, you've got like Age of Sigmar miniatures, this is a perfect, like, for people with a Soul Blight or a Flesh Eater Courts or a Ossiarch Bone Reapers or a Night Hunt army, just any kind of collection of that, or even if you just collected like Warhammer Underworlds miniatures, like Shadespire miniatures from the original like series, you've already got the miniatures for this game. It's played with only a handful of miniatures with a compact player area, only 16 by 16 inches. And you take turns activating and spending AP, so casting spells, fighting, achieving objectives in order to secure victory. Gatherings, which is the name of your warband, will change from game to game via a system of ambitions, side objectives you choose to pursue in the game. Ambitions allow miniatures to become stronger, learn new magic, or suffer debilitating injuries and maladies. So some of the key concepts are everything and everyone is undead. Leaders are necromancers, lights, or witches. Liches or whites. I said lights or witches. Minions are zombies, skeletons, gas, or some kind of beasties. Players alternate activating. Action points can be spent on actions each time you activate a model. And narrative campaign focus, always progressing in some way due to the ambition system, which works as both side objectives and experience. So I like this. It feels a little bit like doing Crusade agendas in Warhammer 40,000 or the plots in other games. They are like, you have your mission, you have your primary focus and objective for your mission, and your ambitions are things you select that you also want to do, and they're not only going to earn you like victory points towards winning that individual game, but they're also where your experience comes from, and they kind of fit the character of your warband's leader, your gatherings leader. Mana-based spellcasting divided by blood, blown, and plasma, because the nature of your leader is going to be one of those three things, and all models have one of these keywords. Each point of mana is a dice, a d10. You can choose how many to roll when casting, taking the highest result of these dice, but then they're gone for the rest of the game. So that's how much you have like as your supply. When it's shattered, it leaves a mana token of its type. So like a skeleton would leave bone, a ghost would leave plasma, a vampire would leave blood, and these can be consumed to gain mana. And you play on a 16 by 16 to encourage making mini dioramas to play on. So the idea is that you should make a play set for your mission, like almost like you can make your base. You know what I mean? If you're making like a toy style play set, and a 16 by 16 inch, it's basically a quarter of a 3-foot table is perfect. And if you make them combine, now you have a 3-foot table for playing larger games, which I think is a cool idea too. In Age of Death, like we said, this is the setting is sort of super haunted, dead world. It feels almost a little bit like if you were to science fiction this, and it was one of the things I actually thought about doing when I was thinking about playing through this game. I was thinking about reskinning it to play Blame, because the idea of this haunted endless city kind of feels like the mega structures from Blame. If you haven't played or read the manga for Blame or the comic, it's a classic like sort of dark science fiction universe from a manga from I think the early 2000s it ended in. And yeah, the main character Killy is basically this wandering leader, and he kind of accumulates a warband. And the different factions are things like the digital characters, the robot characters, and then the human survivors, or like the cyborgs and the human survivors. And like you could just reskin bone, blood, and plasma to those different things. Like the ghost could be digital, blood could be the humans, and then bone could be the cyborgs and the robot monsters. I was immediately inspired to do that. But the idea is that you're going to play these sort of little tiny skirmishes with about 1 to 18 miniatures aside, some train elements, a handful of 10-sided dice, and some tokens represent the drop mana and the objectives on the table. You play it in a series of turns with players alternating activating single models, and then the models are generally like a 28 mil style thing. Turn order. So the initiative step. All measures are in inches and are taken from the model space. After deployment, which is detailed in scenario section below, each gathering receives mana dice of a type and amount equal to their mana points of their leader. So a leader with like 2 blood mana gets 2 mana points. And then these are referred to as your mana pool for your like turn, basically. You roll for initiative, so you roll a d10, the highest one wins. Gathering step, starting with the player with the initiative roll, take turns activating single models until they've all activated. And then others, any NPCs or like unbound monsters will activate, and initiative order bids any number of mana dice to control them. So basically the unbound things on the table, you can try and like use your spell casting and stuff to make them do what you want. And the turn ends. When a model activates, it can spend its action points to perform actions. Each action has an outlined cost below. And there's all these common actions like move. You can attack. And the attack sequence is pretty simple. Choose a target and range of the model's weapon. Roll attack dice equal to the model's weapon's characteristic. Each d10 that hits or exceeds their relevant characteristic is considered a hit. So like different weapons will attack on different stats, right? So like like your dexterity modifier or stat would be what you try and hit with like a ranged weapon on, stuff like that. Total damage of all hits and glances, and subtract the target armor down to a minimum of 1. Subtract total damage from the target's HP, and if any hits were scored, the target may be pushed 1 inch in any direction. So armor just reduces the total pool down, and then any overflow goes into your actual hit point count. A model with an axe with 3 attacks and damage 1 to 3 would roll 3 dice, and if they rolled 2 hits and a glance, they do 7 damage. So 2 hits and a glance, they do 1. Glances are basically if you just hit the number you need, and if you exceed it, you do like an actual hit. So a glance would do 1, and then a hit would do 3. It's a little bit like Warhammer Warcry, except you don't need like a big number to hit with. Pick up a relic. AP cost, cost 1. Lurk, which is like hide. Traverse, which is like go through like a weird, like anything that's like a ladder or a trapdoor, anything that's like a weird way of getting around, climb a rope. And then free actions, they cost 0, they're free, and they're like minor things like chugging a potion or something like that. Whoops, went backwards. You scroll down here. Each that hits or exceeds a model's relic is considered a hit, and each that does not is a glance. Sorry, glances are things that are under. It's not equal to, it's under. I got that wrong. What else we got? We've got core rules. So pushing people, shattering them. If a model is reduced to 0 HP, it's considered shattered and is removed from the table. Each model removed is replaced with a mana token of the same type of the creature it killed. If any leader makes a move action or is pushed across the token, they can pick it up and add it to their mana pool. Relic tokens. These are things like the magic items you can find over the course of the game. Objectives are the things that are on the table that you're trying to interact with. They're usually like a 20 mil base. They can be a huge shard of meteoric glass, statues covered in ancient scrawled secrets, or any other kind of treasure. Falling, rules for flying, so moving around without being impeded by terrain, line of sight, so being able to see each other, and then obscured, it's basically cover. Dangerous terrain board edges. The board edges are deemed to be dangerous terrain. Nothing friendly exists out there in the darkness. If you're pushed into or fall through those things, you take 3 damage. And then again, I love this blacked out page with like the sort of like, this is very Mordheim, the story text in white. I don't know, but like you can tell the inspiration for this game is those eras of games. All right, so now we've got the basic core mechanics of the game. Let's talk about making a warband or a gathering, sorry. You get 300 obols, the silver-infused mana currency of the Endless City. Choose a covenant or forsake one and be wretched undead. Covenants are kind of like the factions inside the city. Purchase a leader and minions, generate a lair, because you get to go back and like fix up your base. Every gathering begins with a maximum deployed limit of 350 obols for each battle. The deployment limit is the maximum value of the models that the players can deploy in a single game. So like if you get extra stuff, the most you can put down is 350. And here's an example one. The leader's name is the Mire Walker, so they're a lich blood person. The traits are Sorcerer's Talent and Chosen of Hands. They have a 2-handed polearm. Their mana is 3 blood and 2 plasma. They can summon Vigor, Congealed Blast, and Blink for their spells. They cost 15. The Furious is a corpse husk with dual hand weapons and light armor. It's like a big like a zombie ogre, basically. The Vindictive is another corpse husk with a bow and trait the March of the Hands. The Restless is a corpse husk that costs 50 with an improvised weapon. And the Cursed is a corpse husk with an improvised weapon as well that costs 50 and they're 295 obols. So basically trying to swamp the enemy with giant murder monsters. Now, covenants are the different allegiances. Each covenant comes with models or spell restrictions, but provides different bonuses. So like, let's say if you want to be part of the Embalmed Hands, the Signs of the Rotten Goddess, if you choose this keyword, your gathering can only contain blood keyword models. Your leader gains the following keywords: Chosen of the Hands, blood. When this gathering receives blood mana dice for its blood mana pool, all models in the gathering restore a hit point. So you basically like Hulk back up. One model can be chosen of the following trait from the Wretched Undead trait list. So March of Hands on the first turn. Before rolling for initiative, you may push this model 4 inches. March of the Hands kind of makes me feel like they're like the Huddle from that Inside game. It's just like a weird ball of flesh that's moving around on all of its different limbs. Or like the Rat King from The Last of Us Part 2. It's just a weird like hand monster. And there's other ones, the Cairnborn. These ones are all bone. So like they're like lich people. The Crescent Moon. They're plasma, they're ghosts. The Recusant Maleficar. This one is you're a lich and maybe initially only take a spells from the necromancy list. So you're trying to raise the undead. And your initial deployment limit is only 300 instead of 350. You gain Erudite. Each time this leader rolls a mana dice, any rolls of 9 or 10 do not discard that mana dice from the gathering's mana pool. So basically you keep your spell dice as long as you roll 9 10s. And one model with the Husky word can be chosen of the following trait: Apprentice. So basically you have like a little like baby wizard. This model knows one spell that is also known from the gathering's leader. because they taught it to him. When spellcasting, they can use the Gathering's mana pool as normal. This model suffers arcane backlash on a 1 or a 2 instead of a 1, and you can't be taken by the leader. Wretched Undead. So this is the one if you don't pick a group, you can kind of be anybody. Of 2 models in this gathering may have the following traits. So Acolyte, you're like a cultist for the leader. And you can be Blood, Bone, or Plasma. And they can chant for 2 AP. The gathering receives an additional mana dice of the type in their mana pool. So you get these little like dudes that can make you more powerful and jazz up your mana pool dice. But you don't get anything else because you're unaligned. You're mercenary undead. And then you get all of these different like traits you can choose from. So 2 models from this gathering can choose a trait from below. Also, Balefire Body, so you're on fire. The Breaking Wheel. If this model moves so its base is touched by an enemy model, that model suffers 2 damage. This model then suffers 1 damage because you're just a giant rolling wheel. Only one enemy can only suffer 1 damage per activation, so you can't like go back and forth over them and keep doing damage. Skitter, Filthy, Fungal Bloom, so you can literally be like Last of Us monsters, or Gnarled, be all dried out mummies. And there's tons of these. So the make your own warband is basically the wretched one. And then you get to purchase your leader. So you can be a lich, which is like, and the leaders don't cost anything because they're required. That's why they were so cheap in that example warband. They're basically like, the cost is their equipment because you have to take one. And then you get their choose a keyword. Bone, the leader gains improve their violence stat. 7+ becomes 6+. That's your roll of dice to hit. You get plus to your max hit points of your blood. And Plasma Ghost, you can fly, but you're -2 hit points and can't wear heavy armor. And then your miniature is this. So you gain a summon spell, choose 3 additional spells, choose a basic leader trait, and then a lich can't wear heavy armor. You carry a shield because he's a lich. That's some wonderful art here. You can be a Revenant, a Desiccated Knight, a Barrow Monarch, or a Spectral Martyr. So it's almost like the name is their class, and then you decide upon what they are. So you could have a Revenant Vampire, you could have a Revenant Ghost, or a Revenant, like, whatchamacallit, a Revenant White. And then the Ascended, 225 obols, an imposing pontiff of sown corpses, a multi-limbed skeletal sorcerer monarch, spectral death incarnate. You can just be like you're basically Nagash. So you're a colossal. And that's your choice. Like, but then if 225 obols, you're only getting like little baby guys to follow you around. So lots of cool ideas for your leader. And then you get to choose a name. There's some cool tables here. So you could be like Eldor Curse Fated or Ace Gewin, the Circle Breaker of the Labyrinth could be your name. And then you buy your minions. Husks are like a golem, a swordsman, like a skeletal swordsman, or like a ghost. A Baron Husk, and it's basically the size, like 20 to 40 mil base for a Husk, 30 to 50 for an Aberrant Husk, and then a Familiar is like a little goblin from Gremlins. Necromantic Revenants, it's like a Zambi. Small beasts, like the undead rats. If you have a copy of Cursed City, actually, you could get so much fun out of this. Flying beasts, large beasts, and gigantic horrors. Actually, Cursed City would be perfect for this. Weapons and equipment. So you can see here the damage track, right? How many dice does it roll to hit on your violence stat? How much does the damage track hit with? I should probably go over the stat line here. So your AP is how many actions you can take. Your move is how many inches you move when you move. Your violence is going to be the dice you need to roll to hit. And then your, your damage track is going to be what the amount that you hit by is. So every miss is going to be a 1 damage. And then, except for the great weapon actually does 2. And then if you get a hit, if you equal or exceed, then you get to make the big damage and total it up. Dual hand weapons, -1 to violence rolls. It's harder to hit with, but you can see you do more damage because you roll 4 dice. Bludgeons can push people. Axes ignore armor. Blades +1 armor against attacks from melee weapons. If you get attacked in combat, you can parry. Large claws can't be taken unless noted in the leader and minion entry because you have to be a beast. And then colossal weapons, things like your ranged weapons of slings and bows, crossbows, how much AP they take, right? So a crossbow does 110, does tons of damage, but you only roll 1 dice. Sorry, range is 1 to 10. 1/6, so it does tons of damage. And your range is 1 inch to 10 inches. But they cost 2 AP to do, right? Because it's slow loading. Bows only cost 1 AP. Or sorry, actually does also cost 2 AP, but alternatively a model armor that can make a 1 AP cost attack, which is 1/3 damage as opposed to 1/4 damage. And short range, so you can do like quick fire. And then the armor, Light armor reduces damage by 1. Heavy armor reduces damage by 2. Shields are by 1. Great shields by 1. +1 armor against attacks from ranged weapons. And the model cannot be pushed by attacks from ranged attack actions. So because you have a huge like pavise to hide behind. And then we've got our thrown weapons, like a war dart or a throwing axe. And then cool equipment that add additional actions that you can do. So like rope and hooks let you ascend and descend for AP cost. Waving banners. Dooting your little musical instruments like an Army of Darkness. Rules for spell casting. So again, like you're rolling on your mana pool dice in Arcane Bash Clash. If you roll a 1, the caster suffers 6 damage, and any models within 3 suffer 3 damage because you explode. 2 to 3, an overload of mana throws the caster wildly about. Because you're going to roll on it's the miscast table, basically. 4 to 6, the caster loses control of their body to malign forces and you get possessed. 7 to 9, a burst of bale fire torches the caster's body. They take 3 damage, and your opponent may choose 1 mana dice from your gatherings pool and add it to theirs. You steal their dice. And then 10, momentary ascendancy. So basically you push the caster 3 inches as if it had the fly keyword. The caster gains a mana dice of any type and must instantly use it to cast another spell because you have like a wild magic go off. And then different spell loads. So things like summon new creatures, choose a shattered friendly model that doesn't have the leader keyword and put it back in the table. Vigor, restore 3 to 5 hit points to a model within 6 in line of sight. Puppet, choose a model and push them 1 inch to 3 inches, depending on your success level, right? So when you channel, if you roll a 1, you miscast. If you roll any other number, you do the basic effects of the spell. If you roll higher than your channel number, then you get the full effect, right? Just like with an attack. Dominate, take control of people. The blood school is stuff like a blood whip. I wonder what that would look like. What's a terrible movie that had blood in it? Blood Rain. It would look like something from Blood Rain, from an Uwe Boll movie. Tide of Vermin, right? Send a sea of rats at people. Congealed blasts. Bone school. The salt art. So like shooting teeth at people to pelt them with them. Bone spears. Bone armor. Choose a friendly model within 3 inches line of sight of the bone keyword at 6/3/5 damage because you rip apart a skeleton nearby. And the caster then gains armor +2/+3 to a maximum of 4 for the rest of the game. This spell can only cast once per game. I love that. You basically just disassemble a skeleton to take armor. And the plasma school, blink, like teleport around, fire up, a slimer at people with plasmic embursement. Spectral pull to pull things around. Plasma shield. On a 5, select a model within 3/6 of the line of sight. That model has +1 armor to a maximum of 4 until the next activation. You can see it's easy to cast, but it doesn't do like the full effect. You'd have to sacrifice somebody for it. And then your lair, you get to name where you're holed up. So like where your crypt is. Like the rotten tower, the rookery of the gloam, the crumbling temple, the library of the void. Great names. And it's just, you can upgrade it later on in the campaign section. So once you've got your warband created, we get right into playing the actual game. And with scenarios, things like determining the environment. So what kind of place are you playing in? Are you in the city? Are you in a tomb? The Great Wastes, an undead settlement, or the Flatwater Mire. Then it's determine your victory conditions. So what are you playing for? If both players roll for a dread omen, because bad things are always happening out here. And then if you're playing a campaign, declare your ambitions, but for one-off games, you don't have to. And then you deploy your gatherings and start playing. So like the Endless City, you have to place 2 to 3 ruins. The Labyrinth, you do wall sections, almost like making like a Space Hulk table because you're underground. The Great Waste, a single central terrain piece must be a ruin building, a tower, a beacon, or a dead tree. If any objectives are placed within this terrain piece, attempt to place them on the highest level possible because it's like the thing you're encountering out in the wastes. Eternal Autumn, 2 to 3 leaves, leaving room for models to pass in between. And then 7, you could have more different ideas. Victory conditions. Consult the seers. You have to go talk to a ghost that you can like convince to give you victory conditions. The gathering carrying off the most relevant relics after 5 turns wins. You're basically like you're trying to like secure like what their wisdom is. Secure the artifacts. Place 3 objectives, 1 in the center of the board and 2 within 3 of the table edges and opposite corners. So you're going diagonally. Any leader that ends their activation next to it gains a mana dice of any kind. And then victory conditions, the gathering with the most models in base contact with an objective is need to control it. The gathering with the most control objectives at the end of turn 4 wins. So you're just trying to be there at the end of the game. Kill your rival. So kill the enemy warband leader. Relic hunters. Again, an additional relic in the center of the table and 2 more relic tokens. Then you're trying to be carrying the most at the end of turn 5. Ancient Horror. Deploy a gigantic horror NPC of any type armed with a colossal weapon and heavy armor. The gathering that does the most damage to the horde at the end of turn 5 wins because you're trying to like take it down. And there's tons more of these. The horde, basically like you're fighting like a huge amount of like zombies. The hidden stash, it's basically hidden treasure from Mordheim. Curse wormed relics. The gathering carrying the most relics at turn 5 wins. If a model is shattered, all relics are dropped. And then escort the relic power, a cool little escort mission, trying to take someone across the table. You can play with these optionally, so like you can have a sorceress dual sight or masterless beasts roaming around. The rising merc, after turn 3, all range weapons have a maximum range of 6 inches. Or a lost peddler, you can buy stuff off and you can't attack them. And the ambitions, these are your extra goals. So you have to declare those. Yeah, it's also the more things that can happen too. The weird, like, what should I call it? Browsing items, like the Thunderclap or Sunburst. Make a range attack with a range 6 weapon. Reduce the target's violence and range by 1, 2 until the end of this next turn. It's like a little, like, flashbang. Scattered treasures all over the city or winged nightmares. Bats are attacking you. All deployments is corner deployment unless stated otherwise. After roll off, the winning player determines a corner, and the others take the opposite corner. The players alternate placing a model touching both table edges, then alternate placing a model that touches either the table edge or that friendly model. So when you deploy, there's no zones. It's just you put someone in the corner, and then you build out your group from that, touching model, another model space to base. That's where you walk on. And then for a campaign game, right, if you've completed any of your ambitions over the course of a battle, you might get some abilities, but you roll for reconstitution maladies if your leader was shattered. So your leader can't really die, but you can get sick from being injured over and over again. Get rewards for victory, score minor ambitions and receive any rewards, update the total ambitions and receive any rewards, visit the bazaar, and then roll for a new scenario. So if you get frail reformation, you're minus your HP, because no one can die, right? You can be perfect reconstitution and gain +1 max hit point. All models of Warband are also restored to full hit points. You never have to worry about losing your guys because they're ghosts. The winner receives 30 plus D10 obols and rolls for 2 minor treasure tables. Loser receives 20 plus 2 D10 obols and rolls in the minor treasure table. And you can find all kinds of weird stuff. Phantasm bottles, blade oil for free actions to get +1 to your violence rolls. Iron sludge tincture to gain some armor. And then eat your magic and ambitions. So ambitions are your leader's long-term goals. Only the ambitions are capable of escaping death in the first place, and drive is not diminished by centuries pass. So like basically you're still after whatever it was you're trying to do when the world ended. Ambitions, along with any progress made to fulfill them, can be carried over between games. You may select new minor ambitions to be active before each battle that you wish, but only a maximum of 4 any time. So you can pick 4 of these things. Magic ones are things like commune with the truth, run out of mana dice during the battle. You have to do it twice. Magic, cast the summon spell up to 4 times and gain +1 max HP for the whole gathering if you get it. So each of these will have like a condition you're trying to fulfill and then the thing you get if you fulfill it. Subtle old grudges, cause enemy model to be shattered with melee attacks 5 times. Improve the violence for a model of your choice by 1. Explore, scour the lands, roll on the treasure table twice and you complete it. If you complete a scenario. So just play 2 different scenarios. Read the omens. Complete a scenario that uses the Dread Omens table. And when playing a scenario using the Dread Omens table, you can reroll the result once. You have to do it 3 times. Build a sanctuary. And then for every 3 completed ambitions, you receive a greater treasure. And then there's going to be more of these. You can see this is a work in progress thing, right? So things like Signs of Abnegation. These are like relic items. A Cinder Ash Bolt. Once per scenario, after this models make a range attack, you can choose to make the following range attack against all other models in 3 of the targets. So it's like a exploding grenade almost. And there's tons of these things in here, and obviously there's going to be more added to like make it more interesting over time. In the bazaar, you can go to the markets. You can purchase any number of new minions, weapons, and armor. Any weapons or armors can be sold at half value, and any minor treasure can be sold for 10 obols. And then Soulbinder, a shady skulking lich will heal you of your ravaged constitution for 50 obols. Remove any constitution or reconstitution malady and reverse the effects and remove it from your sheet. And then finally go see the Tomb Robber. Roll on the treasure table and you may pay 30 obols to receive that item once per gathering. So like basically once per game you can maybe get a cool treasure. Extra places you can go. Get Wayfinders, Pack Beasts, and Seers. An alchemy workshop to make those potions that you can find during the game too if he shows up. And buying potions, all the stuff from the bazaar. And then there's some characters. Threefold Hunter of the Wastes, a Bright Blade. A Neoteric Arquebuliste, so like a shooter guy. And then unique ones, Dolethorn the Pestilent. So these are your mercenaries. This is the ones in here. He's 50 obols. Once a powerful merchant and practitioner of dark pacts with the undergods, Dolethorn was claimed by the sea when the great cataclysm ransacked the earth. And so he's a cool, like, rotten zombie sellsword, basically. And that's it. Some thanks to the end there, which we will, of course, echo for this game. And that is Peter Vigor's Necropolis. So let's see what's going on with the chat and how everybody's doing. And any comments? Nope. That's it. Owl Shield. Is this the author? Is this Peter? Right, I'm here. Pure terror. It's unfinished, I swear. Oh, I don't know. And then Jess says, damn it, I'm going to have to add this to the games I'm going to play. Yeah, this one looks like fun. So what I like about this so far, obviously, the miniatures are super cool that are being sculpted. The art is fantastic from when this rulebook's finally like released in like physical form. And the theme of playing all undead Mordheim without any death, and that you're making cool dioramas as kind of like the primary. Al Shield says I can't comment because it's mine. This is Peter's in the chat right now. The concept of making these cool little like 16-inch dioramas, I think, is really compelling for the community this game's being made for, because the hashtag 28 community, it's about kit bashing. It's about evoking like feelings in your miniatures. And this is giving you a kind of open template for doing that in this kind of undead, grim gothic horror idea. I love the idea of repurposing this too for like a science fiction setting, because I think you could just one-to-one the whole thing and easily do something like Blame style for a just a different spin on the same sort of idea. But it's still dead. It's just technology as opposed to being sort of like dark fantasy. And there's a million great miniatures out here to play with this right now. I think this is a game that people who are like those collectors of things like Warhammer Underworlds or like kit bashers of those miniatures, this is like purpose built for them, because you can use the miniatures you like. They can all have a story and a theme. The idea of like blood, bone, and plasma, I think, is really clever, because it's not saying it has to be these miniatures. It's just saying this is whatever one of these three things evokes in your mind. Use a miniature that kind of fits that, right? So like ghostly for plasma, skeletal for blood, for bone rather. And then blood can be necromancers, vampires, ghouls, you know what I mean? Like any kind of cannibal, like however that's going to be. So the three pillars of like, what's the intent behind this? How do the rules support that intent? And then how does the art, obviously, and the like what's possible once you have that playground to play in, they all sync up really nicely. So I think this is coming along great. Alshid, I'm excited you're in the chat, man. I think this is really cool, and I'm super happy that this is going so well for you. Art looks fantastic. Models look great. I think more people should give this a try. And if you jump on his Discord or on his Patreon, you'll be getting updates. And then obviously it's free to jump on. You can give this game a go right now with your existing model collection. So I think this is a great, like, for those of you who like to spend time getting it just right, and you like that undead miniature stuff, you got a copy of Cursed City, or you got some miniatures from like Warhammer Underworlds or Age of Sigmar, or your favorite other game. Like, I could play this with all confrontation miniatures and be super happy. Maybe I will play this with all confrontation miniatures. I have all the confrontation undead, and they're great. I have all the zombie dwarves, the mid-noir dwarves, which would be perfect for this. Oh, there's a thought. There's a reason to use my confrontation shit until confrontation comes back out. Yeah, you can go way back in time too. There was like, what was that other game called? Dark Heaven by Reaper. There was Crucible by FASA that all did like fantastic old miniatures. So even guys who've got like just old, like D&D undead stuff in a cookie tin, you can definitely play this game. Which I think is great. So let's jump into round two. Alshield says, thanks for taking a look. Well, thank you for obviously making something really cool. And thanks to patrons, because they're the ones that voted this up this week. And it was not close. This was like 21%. There's 20 options and it got 21%. So if everybody got one, it would be 5%. This was a runaway, because it got, I think, a couple hundred people voted. So to get 20% of the vote was significant. All right, so let's jump in and take a look at our next game here, which is ROTVÅRLDEN on the Realms of Carnage. Realms of Chaos. Realms of Chaos. You can see where my brain is right now. Website, which is, of course, my friend Mike Hutchinson's website. He has, penned such minor games like Gaslands, if you've ever heard of it. You might have heard of that game. And ROTVÅRLDEN is a sort of a spin-off of a game he did for Blaster called Mystic Skies, which he did with, it was like a co-created game with Sean Sutter, who did all the miniatures and stuff for it, which was a fun sort of like, imagine Magic the Gathering with miniatures. You're playing as wizards, you're flying around magic carpets, you're summoning guys to fight for you. And it's between 2 and 6 players. This was that, but for undead. You can grab this game right now on itch, plantsmashers.itch.io. And it's just available right now. So you can see here it's $15. Grab a copy of it. And let's have a look at it right now. What's great is actually some of Sean's art is even in here. So shout out to my friend Sean Sutter, because this is a small community, and his great art that shows up in this book. So in the darkness, all was turned to silver. A wind fell, brought the bang of the hounds. Shivering mortals into caves driven sought shelter for the inclement heaven. From the ROTVÅRLDEN by Voliv. It's a fast-paced miniature game of bloody skirmishes in a sorcerous realm. You are one of the haunted. Heroes cursed by your possession of an ancient artifact that seeks to consume your will and direct your actions towards your own terrible end. So think of like the Black Knight from Marvel, where the sword basically talks to him and makes him, who he is, makes him a superhero. You begin each game with only a portion of your warband on the table. So like I said, the Magic the Gathering style, your wizard starts there. They're super mobile. They have a lot of fatigue, but you're going to be summoning warriors onto the table over the course of the game. You'll need to act quickly to gain momentum, but also husband your strength to strike the fatal blow when your opponent is at their most vulnerable. Your warband is led by a powerful sorcery whose spellcasting never fails. The question of which spell you choose to cast, not whether or not it goes off. So a lot like the mana in Magic, making spells go off. In addition to the core objectives of the game, you will select a deck of constantly shifting Triumph cards. And this is a bit like Triumph and Treachery. You have them, and it's a river of 3 conditional things over the course of the turn. If you get the condition, you get the card. It'll usually score you some victory points, but you can also spend them for the boon that's on the other side. So it's a lot like the victory conditions. And it's funny because the parallel development, because I think ROTVÅRLDEN definitely predates Spearhead, but there's some parallel development there where you have to pull between scoring victory points and also spending them to save your ass to keep playing, right, as the boons come through. It's a subterranean world of claustrophobic corridors connecting cavernous voids that house mighty cities, lightless underground oceans, and yet stranger sights. Below the cold, desolate surface lies the frozen cavern of Isvarlden, a region crawling with prowling frozen dead. Deeper still are the great realms of Stenhall, a nightmare of endless stone that has 1,000 warring kingdoms. This is Mike all the way down, making me say weird words he made up. Basically, you've been thrown in chaos by the discovery of the cursed artifacts. Each grants the bearer the power to manifest vast magical armies. So the idea is that you didn't necessarily set out to be this powerful sorcerer. You might be Gollum accidentally carrying the ring. You know what I mean? Like you could be just some like schlub that has this super powerful thing that you're not entirely in control of, and that's working its magic through you. Beset by frozen dead from above, infernal demons from below, and the bloodthirsty warmongering of the haunted, ROTVÅRLDEN is a twilight world that only by torches, luminous fungus, and the burning of subterranean kingdoms at the hands of evil warriors. I immediately thought, setting-wise, of the underworld in Tears of the Kingdom, Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, where like it's dark, but there's like roots that will light things up and weird fungus. There's all kinds of monsters down there. That was sort of like my setting idea for that place. And then some thanks, of course, to Sean for all the text by Mike. And it's an early version, so there will be more to come. So what do you need? To play this game, you need 10 to 30 fantasy miniatures and an eye-catching character model. So obviously you start with your wizard, who represents you in the battlefield. You're haunted. You'll need a dozen or so 6-sided dice and a tape measure, 3x3 play area. So if you make 3 very cool dioramas for playing Necropolis, you could put them together to make the play area for this. This was again part of my pairing thing. I was like, well, one of this is on a 16x16. You could go roughly 3x3. It'd be 32x32 if you did that. So 4 inches off, right? But still pretty close. And then, of course, this contains the classic rule of carnage, which is if there's a thing where the rules contradict, go with what causes the most damage and the most craziness. You also need to download, print, and cut out the Triumph cards. You can download them off the Planet Smasher Games website. You might also want to do the spell cards just because it makes it easier to play the game. Some specific rules. You can pre-measure. Units are always in range of themselves, with shoegazing. More specific rules. The text of a specific rule can conflict with the general rules. In the case of a conflict, the specific circumstance override the general rule. Simultaneous effects. The player's activating gets to choose the order. Roll off. You roll 2 dice and try to roll higher and reroll ties. And you can't reroll a reroll. Although it's funny, the not being able to reroll a reroll technically contradicts roll off. So the one time you can reroll is if you continuously tie roll offs. You're not stuck then. Line of sight. If a straight line can be drawn from any point on a model's base to an object, then that model has line of sight to that object. Blocking terrain blocks line of sight, and then each model counts as blocking terrain. All models can see 360. Select, place, and target. Select doesn't require line of sight because you're picking something. Place doesn't require line of sight and cannot place overlapping terrain or other models. And target requires line of sight if you hear those words. In range is if you have a line from your base to their base. And now we get into models, groups, and units and groups. So a model of both haunted minions are considered and formed into units. And it can consist of either an independent model, like your haunted, or multiple models in a group. Single models, monsters, haunted, they activate individually. Groups will activate together, and wounds are then assigned to them as a group. So you take off models when the wound threshold is basically reached. When moving a group, move each model separately. Groups may attempt to end their movement such that each model is within 6 inches of all their models in the unit. And if they can't, they get broken. A broken unit's not permitted to end its move action in contact with enemy models and can be forced to take break tests for morale. When measuring the range between a group and another unit, at least one member of their unit's in range, the whole group is considered to be in range. Deployed is stuff on the table, and deployed is stuff that hasn't been manifested yet. And then empowered and drained. A unit can have a single empowered or drained token. If it would get a second one, just discard it. While it's empowered, gets +1 to its attacks and +1 to its save. And if it's drained, it's -1. It's just your basically bonuses and buffs. And penalties. Different terrain types. So destructible terrain too, because you can blow things up in this game. It would be like wooden walls, small buildings, low stone walls. And so you get stats for it, how many wounds and its save. And then things that are dangerous are things that would cause damage if you go across it. All right, building a warband. So the first thing you have to do is, remember, this world has like weird stuff happening above and below it. You got to pick your abyssal allegiance for your haunted. And those are like the weird benefactors that your cursed artifact probably is aligned with. And then you purchase 100 crowns with the minions. Now you design the minions you want yourself. There's no like pre-made minions. They roughly go by size, and you can give them equipment appropriate for what's on the miniature. So Haunt is an independent model. Its move is 3+3. Its stamina is 6. And that's the maximum amount of fatigue you can have when you're acting. And then your allegiance, which dictates the spells that you know. Your minions, you got to pick a minion type, so like how big it is. Select a weapon for what's in the model, and then add any keywords you want to try and make it cooler. And you can see here there's a big like class list of them. So a monster, for instance, it's rank 5. It can move 3 inches. It has 10 strikes and a save of 3+, and can take 6 wounds. It's got the Furious keyword, which will allow it to, when you look at the keywords later on. Oops. Oh no, they're not for a while. But the Furious keyword basically allows additional abilities. And then Champion also with Furious. And there's a cost on the side here. So champions can take 5 wounds, and they kind of just scale up as they go. They're a bit faster than monsters, but class will also dictate some of the weapons and equipment you can take by how big you are. So like it goes all the way down to Scrot, which is a grot. So they only cost 2 crowns. So you could have 50 Scrots if you want, although you're not allowed to take that many guys. When you select a minion, you create a minion group. If you want to make a group of Scrots, for instance, you would use them as a unit. And then you play a game. So once you've made a 100 crown warband, you choose your game mode and follow the setup rules. The game is played over a series of rounds. At any point in time, one of the players will have initiative. The model who has the initiative and the structure of each round is dependent on the number of players in the game. So if you have 2 players, it's head-to-head. If you have 3 or more players, it's multiplayer. We'll just focus on the head-to-head for now. Pick a player. When asked to pick a player, roll off because there's only 2 of you. And then round structure in a head-to-head game, each round split into 2 phases. So refresh, the player with initiative passes the other player. So if you had initiative last turn, you give it to the person. You discard all your fatigue, exhausted, empowered, and drain tokens. So all the status is clear. And then action phase, in the action phase of a head-to-head game, pick a player to make the first activation, then take turns going back and forth. Once your turn, you activate one of your unexhausted units or your haunted once if they're unexhausted. And then once all in-play units are exhausted, the round ends and the new game round begins. And for multiplayers, it uses a bolt action style initiative bag. So you put tokens in, 1 for each player. The object should be the same size and shape, like a dice counter or a gaming gem, but each of a unique color, and that dictates who goes in what order. When asked to pick a player, pull an object from the bag. This object indicates the picked player and is then set aside. When there's no objects left in the initiative bag, put all the objects back into the initiative bag. In multiplayer games, each round is still slightly split into 2 phases, but they work slightly differently. In the refresh phase of a multiplayer game, make sure all the objects are back in the bag. Discard all fatigue, exhausted, empowered, and drained tokens. And then during the action phase of a multiplayer game, use the initiative bag to pick a player. Give them 3 activation tokens. Each one must be spent to activate a unit or they're haunted once. And once that player has spent all of those 3 activation tokens or all the units are exhausted, their turn ends and you pick a new player. When the bag's empty and the last player's finished their turn, if there's still unexhausted units, put all the objects back in the bag, pick a new player, and continue playing. So basically, it goes 3, 3, 3, and then you refill the bag. And once the units are all done, then you're done. But you go 3 at a time. All right, in the action phase, players activate their haunted and all their units until they're exhausted. So when a player activates a haunted, the haunted does one of the following in any order. Either gains a fatigue token, makes a move action, or casts a spell that they know. To cast a spell, the player only needs to announce the chosen spell. It's automatically successful and check the spell description to see what it does. If a haunted has a fatigue tokens equal to its stamina, it's exhausted. So basically, your haunted can go 6 times when most other models only go once. And that allows you to gain a fatigue token if you want, like just to end your turn and buy somebody else's activation. Activate a minion unit. When a player activates a minion unit, it makes a move action and then an attack action in either order, and then gets exhausted, and exhausted units are done. When a model is both doomed and exhausted, it's removed from play and placed in the dead pile. Move actions, move equal to your value in inches. Dual move values. When a model has 2 listed move values, it can move once, adding the 2 moves together, or move twice, using each value move in turn. So that's interesting because that means that you could move 3 inches, do something, then move 3 inches. Moving groups. When I'm moving a unit group, each model moves separately. Groups must attempt to end their move within 6 feet of each other, so they become broken. Can't move over the edge of the board. If models in base contact with 1 or more models of an equal or higher rank, it's pinned. So like big guys only get pinned by big guys. So rank 5 guys, like the monster, only stays pinned by another rank 5 monster. It can move away from other models. Models with a higher rank obviously can't be pinned by a lower rank, and models that are doomed and broken do not cause enemy models to become pinned. All right, attacking. When a unit makes an attack action, choose the target. So if, like, say a brute down here attacks a monster, it needs a 5+ to hit with its weapon. If a monster, for instance, would attack another monster, it's a 4+. Terrain, it's a 3+. So like 3+. A champion attacking a warrior hits on a 3. 5 against a monster, 4 against another champion, and vice versa. So like it's by class, and instead of having a weapon skill, it's basically the weapon skill chart from Warhammer. Instead of having a weapon skill, it has how big you are and how good a fighter you are. And there's some exceptions because, like, for instance, Scrots are really good at attacking monsters because the monster can't see them because they're so little. And I like this design mechanic. Champions are also really good at fighting warriors and Scrots because they're just better fighters. And monsters are really good at attacking terrain because it's just a huge thing they can rub up against. And there's a little description of here, the internal logic of the target numbers table. Rolling to hit, roll an attack dice. If a hit's scored, if it gets equal to or better than the roll needed, and if it's a 6, you get 2 hits instead. 1s are always misses, 6s are always crits. After totaling the number of hits for the attack dice, the target number rolls a number of saving throws equal to the number of hits. Each one that equals their save value is then canceled. So if we go back and look at our old stat lines here at the beginning, if a monster was going to, or let's say a monster is being attacked by Scrots, they would roll 2 dice on 3+, and then for each of the hits, the monster would make a save on a 3+. Everyone that fails, it would take a wound through. So, and interesting, and like it allows you to pair units against other units that are slightly more vulnerable to them, which is interesting. Super effective. If an attack is super effective against the target, it always hits on a 3+, and the target suffers -1 of their save. Attack wounds to a group. If a target unit's a group, you must first assign wounds to models that are within range of models' attacks. If you can't, then you can assign wounds to other models in the same group that are not in range. Essentially, kill models that are in range first. When a model's received a number of wounds equal to its wound characteristic, it gets a doom token. A model can only have a single doom token. If something would give it another one, it doesn't. If a model is doomed and exhausted, it's removed from play. So basically, if you haven't activated yet, even if you take a bunch of damage, you still get to activate, right? Because it's all happening simultaneously. And then once you're activated, you're immediately removed from play. So I think that's interesting because it means the alpha strike doesn't prevent you from getting hit back. But if you attack something that's already activated, it just goes away after you finish dooming it. It's a nice mechanic for making stuff not die before it gets to do something during a turn, which is, I think, a critical to like the fun gameplay experience. And then morale, breaking from combat. After resolving an attack, if a unit has more wounds than its rank from the last attack, or all of its models are doomed, it must make a break test and flees if it fails. A unit's breakpoint is its rank +1 for each model in the unit that's not doomed. Roll a d6, hoping to roll low, and if you roll over your breakpoint, you fail your break test and get a broken token. If you flee, you're pushed 3 inches away in a straight line from all enemy models. And then broken units can't end move actions in contact with the enemy, and you can rally potentially later on the turn to become combat effective again. Weapons and equipment, if you want to take these for your guys, they're, hand weapon and shield let you reroll saves of 1. It's very, like kind of Warhammer boosts. Spears and polearms give you range 3 for your attacks. Bows let you shoot, but must discard attack rolls of 6. You don't double down. Guns and crossbows, because you can be slightly sci-fi if you want to. And then claws give you exploding 6s of 3 hits instead of 2. And then here's all our keywords as a reference, right? So ethereal or fly, furious. When a model attacks, may attack any number of models or groups within range of its attack and divide up your attack dice. Nimble, you can pivot any number of times during your movement. Elite, models in this unit get +1 to hit. And all these are purchasable. And then your triumph cards, like I said earlier, 1/2 is the condition. So like specialist here, when your haunted becomes exhausted, if they didn't cast any spells this round, get a VP. And then if you flip it, you get moment of glory. Reroll all missed attack dice, but then you have to discard it in order to play it as your boon. We got all of our different spells. So cantrips are known by all haunted. So regardless of your allegiance, you know these ones. Haste. Select your friendly unit to move within 9 inches to make a move action. Manifest minions. Select 10 points of undeployed minions of a single type from your warband and place these models complete within 9 of your caster or a friendly caster tower, because you have that on the table as a single group. And then blink, place the caster anywhere within 6 of its current position. Manifest a monster model and place this within 9 of the caster or friendly tower. So where your caster is can matter because it lets you put monsters and things in different places. And then we have all of our allegiances. You can be allegiance to Atari, which would give you things like an Erusient Dark. All enemies within 3 inches get a drain token. So they're all -1/-1. Stalking Death. Targets within 12 inches discard an exhausted token. So you can have somebody activate again during a turn. The Basilisk, you can become spiky. Select a friendly minion unit within 9 until the end of the turn. Hits saved by this unit are applied back as hits the attacker, who then rolls saves. And there's tons of these. Morebus, it's like a spider one. Scuttle, target a friendly unit within 9. They gain swift and ethereal. Nebularis, illusory presence, target a friendly unit within 9 to be ethereal for the rest of the game. Pelag, dragon breath, draw 6 inches line from the caster. So the casters can attack through spells sometimes. Any models touched by the line up for a rank 4 strikes 2 attack regardless of line of sight. So you count as a rank 4 model when you're fighting. So picking one of these is kind of half the game. It determines sort of like on top of your core base abilities what kind of a caster you are. The Red King can have Crystal Blades. A friendly unit within 9 inches, they become super effective against all targets until the end of their next activation. Or Alacrity. Select a friendly minion unit within 6 inches of the caster. They may make an action. Attack action, I think that's supposed to be. And then campaign mode, you can play linked games. So you can never exceed 200 crowns, but you can basically get bonuses every time you win. And then these are the core gameplay mechanics. So Sorcerer's Towers for 2 to 4 players. You set up 2 different towers from each other that are more than 18 inches away. And then victory points, when a model causes 1 or more wounds to the enemy tower, its controller scores 1 VP for every wound caused. When a model causes the last wound to an enemy tower, its controller gets 5 VPs. And the game ends when one player scored 20 VPs or at the end of 4 game rounds. Then whoever has the most is the winner. This one's cool. It's kind of like Facing Worlds in Unreal Tournament, or like a Capture the Flag game, but you're smashing a tower. It's a literal tower defense game. Abyssal Pageantry with objective zones for your cards. Circle of Power, it's like a mosh pit from War Machine. And then Blood Tithe, you get slaughter coins for killing the opponent. And then we got some quick ref at the end here. And that's it. So this one I love because this is a great like multiplayer experience for those who already have collections like this. And again, if you're like a Warhammer Age of Sigmar player, ROTVÅRLDEN's just a fun at the game club kind of game that you can play with your existing collection. So I think Mike's done a great job of taking this like kind of whimsical game, right, that he made with Sean, and then adding in this sort of dark fantasy element to make it a little more demonic and hopeless, which I think is really cool. So let's just check out the chat and see what's going on here. And then, yeah, we'll be done until next week. Malev says, ROTVÅRLDEN is a game name that I cannot say in lowercase. Like you can't whisper it. That's a good point. I think it's Varlden. I don't know what the 2 dots over the A signify, like pronunciation wise. Someone will have to correct me later on. Tell me in the comments next week what you guys think that means. Chris Gibson says, sounds like The Mask. And then Matt Wilson says, use for my unused Lord of the Rings army. Yeah, if you have like a cool, like, actually it would be perfect Lord of the Rings game. You could definitely reskin this like Lord of the Rings mosh pit game. Actually, my buddy Shane, who has a huge Lord of the Rings collection, I bet would enjoy playing this with his buddies because it would be perfect for that because it fits that sort of like cursed object who has the ring sort of idea. Yeah, there we go. I think that's it. So next week, we will have a vote. So if you're watching this today on YouTube, like in the general public, that means that you are missing the recording of the next one of these. We had a couple of other lead contenders for the game this week, one of which was Spectre, which is like a sort of a Moderns style game set in like almost like a Jack Ryan sort of universe, which I have some ideas for pairings with. There's a few others that I thought were interesting that were other contenders. Let me see what else was in the contenders this time round. Because there was a few others in the poll that were like way high up there that I thought looked interesting, and you can get in on your vote if you are, or you can watch whatever comes up next week, but you can get in on the vote if you want to check them out. Oh yeah, 7 TV by Crooked Dice got tons of votes this time around too, which has a ton of different like interesting things. County Road Z was up there as well. Free Blades got a bunch of votes. Slip Runners. What else? Skirmish, the worm-infested miniatures game, got a few as well. Scabs got some. So lots of contenders for this. And we'll be back next week with another one of these, which we'll be recording live probably as you guys are watching this on YouTube. So huge thanks for Peter, coming in to watch the actual show and see the game get reviewed. For all of the patrons for picking another great looking game for us to check out, and for you guys for watching. We'll see you for more Indie Hour in the weeks to come. Till then, I'm Ash. Have a good night.